The stars looked the same as they always did from the bridge of Aurora's edge. Pinpricks of light, scattered across the abyss, ancient and silent. But tonight, or what passed for night, in deep space, Captain Jake Morrison felt something unusual. For 3 hours, he had been staring out at the void, and a weight pressed against his chest. Not fear exactly, but something heavier. A stone of intuition. He knew better than to ignore that feeling. "Captain," came the calm but alert voice of Lisa Grant, his science officer. "I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors." Jake sat up. Lisa never used the word strange lightly. She was precise, disciplined, and easily the sharpest mind on his crew. If she sounded unsettled, then it mattered. He moved to her console. The display was a storm of numbers and scatterplots. To anyone else, just static. But Jake had spent 15 years reading sensor data. He knew how to listen to the whispers in the noise. "What am I looking at, Lisa?" Her voice lowered. "A ship, sir. 2 light hours away. It appeared about 10 minutes ago. But here's the impossible part, it didn't arrive. It wasn't there before. It just appeared." Jake's stomach sank. Ships didn't just appear in deep space. They traveled through hyperspace lanes or pushed through with thrusters. Even wrecks had histories, trajectories, causes. But not this. "You've run diagnostics?" 3 times. "The sensors are working perfectly." Lisa hesitated before finishing. "The ship is real. And it's right on the border of Zephyrian space." Jake swore under his breath. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled most of the galaxy for 3,000 years, and they hated surprises. Anything unexplainable was not studied. It was destroyed. And yet, here was something beyond explanation. "Dan," Jake called. A heavy-set man approached, Dan Cooper, chief engineer. The kind of man who could fix anything, who understood machines the way most people understood emotions. "Take a look at this. Tell me I'm not losing it." Dan leaned in, hands dancing across the console. He pulled up multiple spectral views, ran cross-checks. Finally, he leaned back, scowling. "That's not possible. No energy signature. Nothing. No engines, no life support, no power grid. It's a corpse. Just floating there." "But corpses don't appear out of nowhere," Jake muttered. "Exactly. Lisa," Jake said, voice steady. "Visual." Her fingers blurred across the controls. Then the main screen lit up. And silence fell across the bridge. The ship was small, maybe the size of a frigate. But its shape was unlike anything human, Zephyrian, or otherwise. Most vessels wore their purpose openly, engines jutting, weapon mounts exposed, communication arrays bristling. But this was smooth. Seamless. As if carved from a single piece of obsidian. No markings. No scorch. No sign of life or use. Just perfect. Too perfect. "That isn't human," Dan muttered. "It isn't anything," Lisa whispered. Jake stared at the screen. Something about its beauty disturbed him. It wasn't a warship. It wasn't a freighter. It was deliberate. Waiting. Then Lisa's voice cut through the silence, sharp and urgent. "Captain, 3 large energy signatures inbound from Zephyrian space. Closing fast." Jake felt the cold weight return. "Warships?" "Yes, sir. At current speed, they'll arrive in 6 hours." 6 hours. That was all the time they had. Everyone on the bridge knew the Empire's reputation. They did not negotiate with unknowns. They did not show curiosity. Their logic was simple: what cannot be controlled must be destroyed. "Helm," Jake ordered. "Set course for the unknown vessel." Keep distance, but close enough for detailed scans. Dan shot him a worried look. Sir, we don't know what that thing is. I know, Jake said. But if we run now, we'll never know. And this, his eyes fixed on the strange, silent ship, might be the discovery of a lifetime. The Aurora's edge crept closer over the next 3 hours. Lisa ran every scan she could imagine. Each result was the same: no life signs. No radiation. No response to hails. The vessel just sat there. Waiting. Until the Xiperians arrived. When they emerged from hyperspace, the bridge of the Aurora's edge went silent again. 3 ships. 1 massive dreadnought, flanked by 2 escorts. The dreadnought stretched nearly 20 kilometers long, a leviathan of war bristling with enough firepower to erase a moon. Dan paled. That's Admiral Kethvar's flagship. The Eternal Dominion. Jake felt his throat dry. Kethvar was infamous, ruthless, brilliant, merciless. If he had been dispatched, the Empire was taking this very seriously. The Xiperian fleet encircled the mystery vessel like vultures. Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies, Lisa said. Demanding identification. The black ship gave no reply. It drifted silently, indifferent. On the bridge, tension thickened. Dan whispered, "We need to get out of here before the shooting starts." But Jake couldn't move. Something monumental was unfolding. And he had the unshakable feeling that after tonight, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kethvar studied the vessel through towering viewports. In 40 years of war, he had seen countless anomalies. But never this. It looked wrong. As though it didn't belong in this universe. Tactical, he barked. Sir, no weapon signatures. No shields. It appears defenseless. Defenseless. Kethvar's eyes narrowed. No ship was defenseless. A ship with no weapons was either a trap, or a god. Communications. Hail again. 1 minute to respond, or I open fire. And still, silence. Not static. Not jammed signals. Just silence. The kind of silence that listens. Meanwhile, light years away, deep in an asteroid monitoring station hidden on the edge of human space, Lieutenant Amy Rogers stared at her own sensors in shock. Commander Hayes, she called, you need to see this. Hayes, old and weathered by decades of conflict with the Empire, leaned in. The readings confirmed what Amy feared. This ship didn't match any known design in their databases. But, something about it felt eerily familiar. The construction methods, Amy whispered. Some look human. Almost like a ship from our future. Hayes went pale. If she was right, then humanity wasn't staring at an alien vessel. They were staring at themselves. As the Xiperians' patience wore thin, the inevitable came. Time's up, Kethvar declared. Weapons. Fire a warning shot. The Eternal Dominion's cannons hummed, charging power enough to vaporize an asteroid. A searing beam of plasma ripped through space, passing within kilometers of the black vessel's bow. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then, the impossible. The ship moved. Not with thrusters. Not with speed. But with intention. It turned in place, smooth and deliberate, until its bow faced directly at the Xiperian fleet. Like a predator opening its eyes. Jake Morrison watched the maneuver from his bridge and felt his blood run cold. The silent vessel had awakened. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy held its breath. The black vessel did not speak. It did not transmit. It simply turned, a single, graceful movement that carried the weight of inevitability. And Admiral Kethvar, standing on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, felt something he had not felt in decades. Unease. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "still no shields, no countermeasures." "But..." The man hesitated, his voice faltering. "But what?" Kethvar snapped. "Space itself shifted when it moved. Our sensors show distortions. Almost like it bent the distance between 2 points." Kethvar's jaw tightened. Hyperspace mechanics, faster-than-light travel, he knew them all. But this was different. The ship had not jumped. It had not accelerated. It had simply chosen to be elsewhere. And for a fleet commander who had ruled by force, by predictability, by dominance, that was unacceptable. On the Aurora's edge, Captain Jake Morrison stood in stunned silence. "Dan," he whispered, "did you see that?" Dan's eyes were wide. That wasn't thrust. That wasn't inertia. It just rewrote the rules of movement. Lisa added, her voice almost reverent, "It moved the way thought moves." Instantly. Decisively. The crew exchanged glances. In all their years under the Zephyrian Empire's shadow, they had never seen technology beyond comprehension. But this was not technology. It was something else. Something alive. "Captain," Lisa said, "if the Zephyrians fire again." Jake cut her off. "They will. They don't fear the unknown. They erase it." He stared at the black vessel, his thoughts racing. If this was human, if Amy Rogers was right, then what kind of future had humanity built, to create something like this? And why had it come back now? Admiral Kethvar gave his order. "All batteries. Fire to disable." A storm of light erupted from the Eternal Dominion. Hundreds of plasma lances, torpedoes, and antimatter rounds streaked toward the silent ship. A storm that could level continents. On the bridge of the Aurora's edge, alarms flared. "Impact in 5 seconds." Lisa cried. Jake braced himself. Even if the unknown ship somehow survived, the shockwave alone could tear them apart. The void lit up with fire. And then, silence. When the glare cleared, the crew of the Aurora's edge gasped. Every weapon discharged had stopped mid-flight. Dozens of torpedoes and plasma bursts hung frozen in space, glowing, humming, trembling like insects in amber. Time itself seemed to have hesitated. "Impossible," Dan whispered. Jake could barely breathe. It didn't block the attack. It didn't deflect it. It refused to allow it. On the Zephyrian flagship, chaos rippled across the bridge. "Sir, our weapons are suspended." Kethvar's face darkened. He had fought countless enemies. He had destroyed fleets, crushed rebellions, executed worlds. But never had his power been denied so effortlessly. The black ship remained silent. But its silence was no longer passive. It was judgment. "Sir," Lisa's voice broke through Jake's awe. "The ship, it's scanning everything. Us. The Zephyrians. The surrounding space. I think." She swallowed hard. "I think it's learning." Dan's fists clenched. "Learning what? About us? About war? About weakness?" Jake said nothing. His mind spun with possibilities, each one darker than the last. Then, for the first time, the ship made a sound. A low vibration, deeper than hearing, more felt than heard. It thrummed through the hull of the Aurora's edge, resonating in bones, in blood, in thought. Lisa clutched her head. "It's in my mind." Jake felt it too. Not words, not language. A presence. A consciousness vast and old. It wasn't speaking. It was acknowledging. On the Eternal Dominion, panic erupted. Officers screamed as the resonance rattled through them. Systems glitched. Lights flickered. Kethvar forced himself to stand tall. Focus shields on full. Redirect power to dampeners. But nothing worked. The resonance was not sound. Not energy. It was something deeper. Something that treated their defenses as irrelevant. The ship was not attacking. It was, reminding them. Reminding them how small they were. Jake steadied himself against the railing. The resonance pulsed once more, then faded. And in the silence that followed, the impossible became undeniable. The Zephyrian fleet, the most feared military power in the galaxy, had not fired again. They were afraid. Lisa whispered what everyone was thinking. "Captain, what if this is a warning?" Dan's voice cracked. A warning of what? Jake's eyes stayed locked on the vessel. That the galaxy's time of dominance is over. Across the stars, in the hidden human outpost, Lieutenant Amy Rogers watched the same readings pour across her console. The ship's resonance had reached even there. Her commander's voice was tight. "Send the data to Earth. Now. Every second matters." Amy hesitated, her hands trembling. "Sir, what if sending this makes us targets?" Hayes looked at her with grim resolve. "Lieutenant, if this ship is human, then it came back for a reason. And if it isn't?" He exhaled slowly. "Then we're already living in borrowed time." On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar made his choice. Retreat. His officers froze. None dared question him aloud, but their shock was plain. The Empire did not retreat. Ever. But Kethvar's eyes burned with cold calculation. "This vessel is not a threat we can crush by force. Not yet. We will watch. We will learn. And when the time comes, we will strike." The Zephyrian fleet began to pull back, their weapons still frozen in the void. And as they departed, the black vessel remained perfectly still. Watching. On the bridge of the Aurora's edge, silence stretched long. Dan finally spoke. "Captain, what now?" Jake looked at the screen, at the silent ship that had appeared from nowhere, that had bent time and stopped an empire's wrath with a thought. And for the first time, he admitted the truth aloud. "I don't know." But far away, deep beneath Earth's surface in bunkers sealed for centuries, old systems stirred. Warning lights blinked awake. Machines hummed to life. Because the black vessel was not just watching the Empire. It was listening for something older. Something far more dangerous. Something that had been waiting for 500,000 years. If an alien empire fired their full arsenal, and you watched every weapon stop mid-space, would you see the silent ship as a savior, or a threat beyond imagination? Let me know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because part 3 reveals why this ship really came back. The Zephyrian fleet retreated. Their silence carried more weight than any victory parade. For the first time in centuries, an empire built on domination had chosen not to conquer. And still, the black vessel did not move. It simply waited, as though the battle had been nothing more than an opening act. On the Aurora's edge, the crew could barely process what they had witnessed. Lisa whispered, "I've never seen Zephyrians run from anything." Dan muttered, "They'll be back. They always come back. With more ships. With more fire." Jake shook his head. "No, this was different. They've seen something they don't understand. And fear of the unknown, even tyrants feel it." But even as he said the words, he felt a truth gnawing at him. The Zephyrians were not the real story here. Across the galaxy, in the human outpost hidden among dead stars, Lieutenant Amy Rogers and Commander Hayes pored over the resonance data. Amy frowned. "Sir, this frequency. It didn't just project. It echoed." Echoed? Hayes leaned closer. "Yes. Across subspace. Across layers." She hesitated. Like it was, calling out. Hayes' face hardened. "Calling what?" Amy didn't answer. Some truths weighed too heavily to speak. Deep in the vaults of Earth, sealed since humanity's fall, ancient machines flickered awake. Monitors scrolled with alien glyphs beside human words. Symbols that had not been seen in 500,000 years. One phrase repeated, line after line, in red. Architect signal detected. On the Zephyrian capital world, High Strategos Vera knelt before the Empress herself, relaying Kethvar's retreat. The Empress was silent for a long time. Her throne loomed like a monolith carved of obsidian, her eyes cold stars in the void. An empire does not fear, she said at last. It endures. It adapts. If this vessel can defy our fire, then it is not a foe. She leaned forward. It is a lesson. One the galaxy must learn before it learns us. But even she, unbending, unyielding, felt the echo in her bones. And for the first time, she wondered if her empire was no longer the center of the story. On the Aurora's edge, Jake Morrison finally addressed what none dared to voice. What if that ship isn't here to fight the Zephyrians? Lisa frowned. Then why reveal itself now? Why intervene? Jake's gaze darkened. Because something worse is coming. The words felt heavy, as though simply speaking them gave them weight. That night, Jake dreamed. In his dream, he stood on a barren plain of shattered stone. The black vessel hung in the sky above him, vast and silent. And then he saw them. Shapes not bound by form, vast, geometric, shifting like impossible machines made of living thought. The architects. They did not speak, yet he knew. These were the ones who had broken humanity 500,000 years ago. Not the Zephyrians. Not the petty empires of today. Something older. Something that had sculpted the galaxy itself, and then vanished. And now, they were stirring again. Jake woke with a gasp, his skin cold with sweat. And in that silence, he understood, the black ship was not humanity's weapon. It was humanity's answer. Back in the outpost, Amy Rogers' console flickered. Lines of data scrolled, not from her systems, but through them, as if an outside hand were writing across her screen. She read the words aloud, her voice trembling. The builders return. The watchers rise. Humanity will not be silent. Hayes froze. Who sent that? Amy swallowed hard. Sir. I think it came from Earth itself. On the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar stared at the frozen weaponry still hanging in space, relics of their failed strike. He ordered them retrieved, to study. To learn. But when the torpedoes were brought aboard, they crumbled to dust. As though time had passed differently for them. Kethvar clenched his fists. Whoever commanded the black vessel had not just stopped their weapons. They had rewritten their history. And if history could be rewritten once, it could be rewritten again. On the Aurora's edge, Lisa watched the black ship finally begin to move. Not fast. Not aggressive. Simply, repositioning. But every soul on the bridge felt it, this was not retreat, not advance. It was preparation. Dan whispered, it knows where it's going. Jake murmured back, and I think, it's going where it began. Because in the deepest vaults of Earth, buried beneath forgotten ruins, lay a chamber sealed by impossible geometry. A chamber the architects themselves had left behind when humanity fell. And the black vessel was its key. The galaxy would remember the day the Zephyrians retreated. But what mattered more was the day Earth stirred. For 500,000 years, the galaxy had believed humanity broken, scattered, irrelevant. But humanity had waited. Not in silence. Not in despair. In preparation. The Zephyrians did not understand. The other empires did not yet suspect. But the black ship had not come to wage war for territory, or revenge, or conquest. It had come because the architects were awakening. And when they returned, the galaxy would not face them alone. Humanity, forgotten, underestimated, patient, would rise again. And somewhere, in the dark beyond maps, the architects opened their eyes. Their voices were not voices, their forms not forms. But their intent was clear, whispered across the stars. The cycle begins again.